Hello. So this video is a performance review of Kari Williamson and Nate Schierman's The Witching Hour, formed by Sick and Buskin Theatre. Incidentally, I'm wearing my Mad Hatter hat because you got $1 off alcoholic beverages if you dressed up in costume, and I went as the Mad Hatter. So, that's fun. So, this is a murder mystery comedy dinner theater production. Is set in Salem, Massachusetts, and we follow three sisters, Hazel, Athena, and Lorelei Grimmore. They own a magical healing center, along with their niece, Miranda. The start of the real problem is that they have been losing control of their magic, and they're not sure why. And so that's creating some problems. Like the lights flickering, strange rattling sounds, giving a female customer a full beard, turning another customer's fiance into a frog, etc., etc. So, the three sisters each have their own ideas about how to deal with this problem. Hazel wants to bring in investors, including potentially Dan Putnam. Dan Putnam is the descendant of Ann Putnam, one of the Salem witch trial accusers, and he runs a company that rehabilitates witches. Basically, he gets them to be non-magical. Dan Putnam and Lorelei had a sort of troubled history, romantic history in high school, and so there's a lot of tension there. He brings with him his assistant, Jane, forget her last name, but basically, she is a true believer in the crusade of wiping out the evil of witchcraft. And so that's her shtick. Dan is also kind of in a, at least preliminary, relationship with Athena Grimmore, the middle sister. Athena's plan to get the Faith Center, or get the healing center, magical healing center, back on track is basically to bring in her friend from New York, who is a magic coach, I guess. So like he is another witch or wizard or warlock or whatever it is, and he is going to help them recover their magic, is the plan. And then Lorelei, she wants to bring in Phoenix Draco, who is a successful lawyer and a powerful witch, wizard, warlock, whatever it is, in his own right. And Lorelei wants him to invest in the business. He wants to buy it. Lorelei is also dating Phoenix at the moment, but Phoenix has also dated her two older sisters. So that's, that is what it is. So stuff is going along. There's a lot of, it's sort of standard good comedy stuff where, you have a lot of quick moving parts as these different storylines are getting developed. Then, Tom Edwards comes in. He is the person who Hazel has brought in to potentially invest in the business. And he gets sort of shunted off to the side for a while, and eventually he ends up hanging out with Miranda, who's incredibly upbeat. She is a big fan of Glenda the Good Witch from The Wizard of Oz. And she teaches him to make healing teas. This is important because they are making healing teas Um, Tom has been sort of misidentified as the magic coach, and so Lorelai and then Miranda are basically just like, oh yeah, add whatever you think to the tea. Just we'll magic it up some. And so Tom just starts adding stuff kind of at random to this tea. Then everybody shows up, and we eventually find out that Phoenix Draco has a plan basically to take over this business, and he's the villain. Then he drinks one of the teas and dies. Oh, the murder has occurred. And then we have a break. We have a break during which time the actors come down off the stage. They interact with people at the tables, so they actually engage in character with us, and we get to sort of ask them questions, gather clues, try and figure out who did it, and then on your ballot, this is an unfilled out one, you would vote for who you think did it, why they did it, and what is happening to the sisters' magic. And so that was the thing. The objective, basically, is to solve this murder mystery. And then after a certain amount of time, the actors go back up on stage, we resume the show, we have the investigation. Sorry. And one of the things that was very striking to me is a lot of the possibilities and arguments and questions that we had mulled over at our table were actually addressed in this last portion. X person had this motive, Y person had that motive, who had opportunity, these kinds of things. They were all addressed. So it was actually very, very clever the way that Kari and Nate anticipated the kinds of questions and the kinds of potential explanations that we were all envisioning. So that was the play itself. I'm not going to give away the ending. I'm not going to tell you who the murderer is, because you probably will not be able to see it yourself in any reasonable amount of time, but hopefully, Kari has sold a script before. Hopefully she will do it again. Hopefully someone in your area will buy it. Anyway, so I'm not going to give away who the murderer is, but this was I think this was a really, really good production. I've been involved in Sick and Buskin performances before. I will be again. Everything Sick and Buskin does is really, really good. The performances across the board were good. Everybody who was involved, as always, was good. People bring their own distinct sort of personalities to it. But one of the things is, because Kari and Nate are local playwrights, and Kari is on the board of Sick and Buskin, this was kind of a play written with Sick and Buskin performers in mind. Kari herself was in it. Stephanie Austin, who's another member of the board, Melissa Brennan, Zach Myers, Eric. I can't remember Eric's last name. Ziegler, I think. Anyway, these are people who've all been involved in Sick and Buskin performances before. They're really, really amazing performers, and part of what made this work really, really well, I think, is that for at least some of these people, at least some of these characters, Kari had that particular actor in mind. For some of them, I know she didn't, but with some of these characters, I know Kari was thinking in terms of, here's who could play this part, and it was sort of inspired by characteristics of that person. So everybody was able to bring their own performance style, their own background to the show, but it also fit together really well given the way that it was constructed. So there's that element of it. One of the things, so this may be just the norm for dinner theater, because I'm not really a dinner theater person. It's not something that I regularly go to. One of the things that did really impress me, though, is that both when the cast was walking around before the show, but also during the sort of middle portion where we were supposed to be asking them questions and gathering information, they were really, really good at improvising, really, really good at staying in character and presenting answers that made sense with their characters. And partially because I know many of the actors in real life, I felt okay about trying to challenge them sometimes and trying to sort of ask slightly offbeat questions or things that they might not have necessarily anticipated or things they might not necessarily um, have been asked by a bunch of other people and just sort of see how well they could improv. And they did really well. They consistently did really well. So I think that was really, really good. Again, that may be just a normal part of dinner theater that I'm not super familiar with, but for me, it helped make that experience seem more realistic in a way, but it made it more engaging and more enjoyable to actually be able to participate in the show in that sense, and still have it be coherent and make sense with what was going on. The one, not really critique necessarily, but the one thing that I wasn't massively thrilled with is that the stage itself was not very big. I mean, it was a reasonable sized stage, but because they had either a sort of check-in podium and table, or they had an armchair, they had a large cauldron and the table with the tea stuff on it. Like, there was a good amount of floor space on this stage that was taken up. My cat is screaming. I don't know if the mic is picking that up, but I apologize if it is. So there was a good amount of floor space actually taken up on this stage with stuff. And because it wasn't a massive stage and you had 10 people on there at some times, it did at times feel very crowded. Now, I don't have a huge problem with that, in part because this play is set in rooms within the healing center. And so the rooms themselves would probably not be massively spacious. So I don't think this is unrealistic for the set that for the setting that the play has. But because there were so many people in such a small stage with so many fairly bulky things in some scenes, and everybody's trying to play out toward the crowd, some of the blocking felt a little bit awkward in that because one of the challenges is to figure out where on the stage people can stand without blocking other characters who need to be involved in the scene, so that everybody can be visible, but also make it seem somewhat natural. And so I think that was a big challenge, given the size of the stage and the size of some of the set pieces. And there were times where it felt very crowded up there. But again, I think that's a comparatively small issue, and it's not really something that particularly bothered me a lot, because again, within the context of this is set in a magical healing center, and the rooms would only be so big, not a big issue for me.